Okay, picture this. You're in Hyderabad, maybe 2025. It's busy, scooters buzzing, vendors calling out. It's just constant motion.
Yeah, absolutely. Classic Hyderabad.
And right in the middle of it all, you've got the gig workers. The person delivering your food, hot and fast, or the driver picking someone up. They're kind of the engine behind so much of our daily convenience, aren't they?
They really are. It's become so seamless, hasn't it? You tap your phone and boom, service arrives. Groceries, rugs, packages, it all just happens.
But there's this other side to it, the side we don't always think about.
You mean the lack of a safety net?
Exactly. No regular health insurance from an employer, no pension plans building up, no paid sick days. It's the kind of security that, well, many people in traditional jobs just expect.
Right. It's a constant hustle for the next gig, the next payment. That flexibility people talk about, it often comes with a huge dose of instability.
Yeah, what happens if they get hurt? Or just sick for a week? That income just stops.
It's a massive vulnerability. A simple accident, a bout of flu. It can throw their entire financial situation into chaos. They often just don't have that buffer.
Which brings us to what's happening in Telangana. They've drafted this gig and platform workers welfare bill.
Yes, I've been following that. It looks like a really serious attempt to tackle this head on.
It does, doesn't it? We've seen bits and pieces elsewhere, maybe some talk nationally, but this Telangana proposal feels, I don't know, more concrete somehow.
I agree. It seems quite proactive in trying to fill those social security gaps we were just talking about.
So that's what we're diving into today. We want to break down what this bill actually proposes. There's talk about Social Security, a special welfare fund.
And crucially, some real penalties for the big platforms if they don't play ball. That's where it gets particularly interesting.
Get ready, folks, because this could seriously shake things up in the gig economy, at least in Telangana, maybe even beyond.
Okay, so let's start with the core of it. This proposed Telangana Gig and Platform Workers Welfare Fund.
Right, the fund. What's the basic idea?
Well, think of it like a big collective savings pot, basically. Money pooled together specifically for all the gig workers in the state.
A dedicated pot of money. And the goal is to provide those missing benefits.
Exactly. Things like help with medical expenses if they get sick, financial support if they have an accident while working, that kind of thing.
Okay, essential stuff.
Yeah, and there's even mention of potentially helping out during slow periods, when work dries up a bit, which happens.
That could be huge. That predictability, even a little bit, would make such a difference.
Absolutely. Imagine the peace of mind, knowing there's something there if things go wrong or work slows down.
Okay, the big question then.
Yeah.
Who pays for it? Where does the money come from?
Yes. The funding mechanism. It's quite direct. The bill proposes a mandatory welfare fund contribution.
Mandatory, okay. How much?
Just 1 to 2%. 1 to 2% of every single payment a gig worker gets for a job they complete through a platform.
Wait, so on every food delivery, every ride, a small percentage goes into this fund?
That's the proposal. And importantly, it's not supposed to come out of the worker's pocket.
Right, that's crucial.
The bill puts the obligations squarely on the aggregators. The Ubers, the Zomatos, Swiggies, Olas. The platforms themselves have to pay this 1–2% fee per transaction into the fund.
Now, I can hear some people thinking, oh, great, another cost passed on. But the idea here is that it's directly for the worker's benefit, right?
Precisely. It's not a general tax. It's earmarked specifically to support the people actually doing the work, generating the revenue for these platforms. It's framed as an investment in their well-being.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do you make sure the money is managed properly and actually used for the right things?
Good question. The bill proposes setting up a gig and platform workers welfare board.
A board, like an oversight committee?
Yes, but with real authority, seemingly. They'd be responsible for managing the fund, making sure it goes towards things like medical care, insurance, the intended benefits.
Who sits on this board? Is it just government folks?
Well, the plan is for Telangana's Labor Minister to chair it, which shows government commitment.
Okay.
But critically, it's also supposed to include representatives from the workers themselves and from the platform companies.
Ah, that's interesting. So both sides have a voice.
That seems to be the aim. A balanced representation to try and ensure it's managed fairly and addresses everyone's, well, maybe not everyone's needs, but the core needs.
All right, so there's a fund funded by platforms, managed by a board. But what if a platform just doesn't pay or tries to drag its feet?
Now we get to the teeth of the bill. This is where it potentially gets quite serious for the platforms.
You mentioned penalties earlier. What are we talking about? Just fines?
Well, yes, fines. Potentially quite large ones, up to Rs 2 lakh. But it goes further than that.
Further how?
The bill actually includes the possibility of jail time, up to 1 year in prison for aggregators who fail to pay that 1-2% welfare fee.
Wow. Okay. Jail time for not paying a welfare contribution. That's a strong message.
It certainly is. It definitely moves it beyond just being a cost of doing business that they can maybe factor in or ignore. This introduces a different level of risk.
It really elevates the stakes. It sends a signal that this isn't just some minor regulation they can brush off.
Exactly. And there's more on the compliance front, too. It's not just about the money.
What else?
Transparency, data sharing. The bill requires aggregators to hand over their complete database of all their gig workers in the state.
All of them.
Yeah.
Like names, contact info, everything.
The specifics might need ironing out, but yes, a comprehensive database. And they'd have just 60 days to do it once the bill becomes law.
60 days. That's a tight deadline for potentially huge amounts of data.
It is. And it would give the government a much clearer picture of who these workers are, how many there are essential information for actually running these welfare schemes effectively.
And what if they miss the deadline? Or the data isn't complete?
There's another potential fine for that, up to Rs. 50,000 for missing the deadline or not submitting required reports.
Okay, so they're really trying to cover the bases here. Pay the fee, share the data, or face serious consequences.
You can almost imagine the conversations happening inside these companies right now, can't you?
Small laugh. Yeah, like an executive having to explain to the board, well, there's a small chance I might go to jail over a 1% fee.
It certainly puts a different spin on compliance meetings. It makes it very personal, very real.
It feels like a clear message. You can't just treat these workers as disposable parts anymore. The relationship is changing, or at least Telangana wants it to change.
Definitely. It challenges that long-standing partner versus employee distinction that has allowed platforms to sidestep many traditional responsibilities.
To really get why this matters so much, we need to look at the bigger picture, the whole gig economy in India. The growth has been phenomenal, right?
Absolutely staggering. Think about it. Back in 2020, the estimate was around 8 million gig workers across India.
8 million. That's already a lot.
And the projection, by around 2029-30, it's expected to hit something like 24 million. According to NETI Aayog, anyway. That's a tripling in a decade.
24 million people. That's a huge chunk of the workforce.
It's a fundamental shift in how work is structured for millions. And Telangana alone has a significant number. Estimates suggest over 400,000 gig workers right there.
400,000 in just one state. And as we said, they're often classified as partners.
Right, that crucial distinction. Partners, not employees. Which means typically no benefits, no job security in the traditional sense.
It sounds flexible, but the reality can be tough. I remember seeing a survey from a few years back, maybe Mumbai and Delhi.
Yes, I think I know the one. It highlighted how precarious things are. Something like 90% of those surveyed said gig work was their main income source.
90%. So not just a side hustle for most, this is how they pay the bills.
Exactly. But the survey also found that around half of them struggled to cover basic living costs. Half.
That's wow.
Yeah.
Despite working, they're struggling.
And that's before you even factor in the risks, accidents on the road for delivery folks, the physical strain of some jobs. The need for some kind of safety net is just glaringly obvious.
And the central government's code on Social Security from 2020, which was meant to help, it's kind of stalled, hasn't it?
Its implementation has definitely been slow, yes. Which is why you're seeing states stepping in. Rajasthan took action, Karnataka did.
And now Telangana.
Yeah.
And as we're seeing, their version seems particularly forceful.
It does appear to be one of the strongest state-level attempts so far, especially with those enforcement mechanisms we discuss.
Okay, so beyond the money and the penalties, what else is in this Telangana bill to promote, let's say, fair play?
Well, there's some really important provisions. One that jumps out immediately is the anti-discrimination clause.
Anti-discrimination. How does that apply here?
It basically says the platforms have to make sure their automated systems, the algorithms deciding who gets which job, how much they're paid, all that don't discriminate.
Based on what?
Based on things like religion, race, caste, gender, disability, even place of birth, which in India's context is incredibly significant.
Huh. So they need to make sure the tech itself isn't biased.
That's the idea. Algorithms aren't inherently neutral. They can reflect existing biases if not carefully designed and monitored. This clause tries to prevent that. Audits will probably be needed.
That's a big step. What else?
Termination rules how workers can be kicked off the platform.
Right, that's a huge issue. People getting deactivated suddenly, often with no clear reason.
Exactly. This bill says platforms can't just terminate someone without a proper inquiry and a valid reason. And crucially, they have to give at least 7 days notice.
7 days notice. Okay, it's not a huge amount of time, but it's better than nothing, right? Gives people a chance to figure things out.
It introduces a degree of predictability and process that's often missing. It prevents that sudden overnight loss of income without warning.
Anything else on fairness?
There's a requirement for platforms to provide a safe and healthy working environment.
Okay. What does that actually mean in practice? It sounds a bit vague.
It is quite broad, admittedly. The bill doesn't really spell out the specifics. That's definitely something that might need more detailed rules later.
Yeah, because what's safe for a delivery rider in monsoon, floods in Hyderabad, that's a tough one to define.
Very true. But just including that clause acknowledges some level of platform responsibility for worker well-being beyond just the transaction itself. It opens a door for future standards.
And how is all this enforced? You mentioned penalties, but what about the legal process?
The bill classifies offenses as cognizable, bailable, and compoundable.
Okay, break that down.
Cognizable means police can investigate and potentially arrest without a warrant if they have cause. Bailable means the accused can apply for bail. Compoundable means some cases might be settled out of court.
And who hears these cases?
A judicial magistrate of the first class or someone higher. So it's being treated seriously within the judicial system, not just as a minor regulatory issue.
It's interesting how they went about introducing this. The chief minister, Revanth Reddy, didn't just drop it on everyone, did he?
No, not at all. Quite the opposite. Around mid-April 2025, he specifically directed them to put the draft bill online.
Online, for anyone to see.
Yes, and actively asked for feedback from gig workers, from the unions, from the general public. It's a very public, participatory approach.
That's quite refreshing, actually, giving people a chance to weigh in on something that affects them directly.
It builds legitimacy and potentially makes the final bill stronger by incorporating real-world perspectives.
And they have a target date for finalizing it.
They do, and it's a significant one. May 1st, 2025.
May Day, International Workers' Day.
Exactly. That timing is clearly intentional, reinforcing the message about worker rights and welfare. It also ties back to an election promise made by the Congress Party.
How have the actual workers' unions reacted? Are they happy with it?
Generally, yes, very positive. Sheikh Saladin from the Telangana Gig and Platform Workers Union called it a historic moment. That's strong praise.
It suggests they feel it's a real step forward, something they've been fighting for.
For sure. These unions have been highlighting the issues low pay, lack of transparency, the need for regulation for years. They see this as major progress, even if they have broader demands too, like fair wages and maybe even a state-run app alternative.
And it's getting attention nationally too, you mentioned.
Yes, Rahul Gandhi voiced support for a comprehensive bill back in November, indicating this isn't just a local issue, it resonates across the country.
It shows that the pressures and problems of the gig economy are being recognized more widely now.
Definitely. What happens in Telangana could influence conversations and actions elsewhere.
Okay, let's switch gears slightly. We talked about imagining the boardroom reaction to the jail time possibility.
Yes, slight chuckle.
What about just that 1–2% fee? For companies processing millions of transactions, even a small percentage adds up, right?
Oh, absolutely. 1 or 2% might sound tiny per ride or delivery, but multiply it across their entire operation in Telangana. It could be a very significant number on their balance sheet.
So you'd expect some pushback. Lobbying. Trying to water it down.
Almost certainly. They'll be running the numbers, looking at the impact on profitability, considering how or if they might pass that cost on. It wouldn't be surprising to see intense discussions behind the scenes.
How do we absorb this? Do delivery fees go up? Do driver payouts go down? Those kinds of conversations.
Precisely. But then you throw in the jail time possibility again.
Right. It complicates the purely financial calculation.
It adds a whole different kind of risk. And that 60-day deadline for the data dump?
Yeah, that sounds like it could cause some frantic scrambling internally.
Yeah.
Where is all this data? Is it accurate? Can we get it ready?
It forces a level of transparency they might not be used to. It's the government saying, we need to know who works for you, and we need to know now.
It really does feel like a potential shift in the power dynamic. Less treating workers like, just cogs in the machine.
It's a move towards acknowledging their contribution and their rights in a more formal, legally binding way, challenging that idea that they're just independent contractors with no real ties or responsibilities owed by the platform.
So, putting Telangana in context, We mentioned Rajasthan and Karnataka have also done things. How does Telangana's bill stack up? Is it leading the way?
Well, it's definitely part of a trend. Rajasthan set up a welfare board and fund through a levy. Karnataka did something similar with a fee and grievance process. So the basic idea isn't unique to Telangana.
But what makes Telangana stand out?
It really seems to be those penalties, the potential for jail time and the significant fines for noncompliance. That's the part that feels, well, stronger.
More teeth, essentially.
Exactly. While other states laid groundwork, Telangana seems to be adding a much stronger enforcement mechanism, a bigger deterrent.
So could this become the model?
Yeah.
As the gig economy grows everywhere and the national code is still lagging, could other states look at Telangana and say, maybe we need that too?
It's definitely plausible. If this works in Telangana, if it actually improves worker welfare and the platforms comply, other states facing the same issues will surely take notice. The pressure to do something for this workforce is only growing.
Of course, implementing something like this isn't easy. What are the potential bumps in the road? The challenges?
Well, first off, that financial impact we talked about, the 1-2% fee, where does that cost ultimately land?
Right. Do the platforms just eat it? Unlikely.
Probably not entirely. So does it get passed on to consumers? Your dosa delivery gets more expensive?
Ugh, okay.
Or does it somehow get passed back to the workers? Maybe slightly lower base fares or fewer incentives. That's a real risk.
Finding that balance is tricky. Then there's the enforcement itself.
Yes, setting up this welfare board is one thing, but will it actually have the resources, the staff, the systems to properly monitor all these platforms and handle worker complaints effectively? That's a big operational challenge.
Especially with potentially hundreds of thousands of workers.
Exactly. And remember that vague, safe, and healthy working environment clause.
Yeah, how do you enforce that without clear definitions?
It could lead to disputes, uncertainty. It needs to be fleshed out with more specific guidelines to be truly effective, I think.
And what about the workers themselves? Are they all universally thrilled?
The unions seem broadly supportive, as we said, but individual workers, their feelings might be mixed. Some might feel it's a great first step. Others might say it doesn't go far enough.
Like it doesn't mention minimum wages, for example.
Right. Or protections against algorithms cutting pay unpredictably. So for some, it might feel incomplete.
And there's the practical challenge of just making sure workers even know about this stuff, right?
Absolutely critical, especially workers in rural areas or maybe those who aren't as digitally connected. How do you make sure they know this fund exists and how to access the benefits if they need them?
So a big awareness campaign will be needed from the Labor Department.
Crucial. The best law in the world doesn't help if people don't know how to use it. Communication and outreach are key to making it actually work on the ground.
It really helps to bring it back to the people involved. Like the stories you hear, Ravi, that 28-year-old delivery rider in Hyderabad.
Yeah, working 12-hour days, hustling constantly.
And then he sprains his ankle, a simple fall, and loses a whole week's income. Just like that.
It perfectly highlights that fragility. No sick pay, maybe inadequate insurance, if any. A small setback becomes a major crisis.
Or Priya, the beautician using an app. She likes the flexibility, sure, but the income is just up and down all the time. Some months okay, others a real struggle.
Total income uncertainty, it's stressful.
And for people like Ravi and Priya, this welfare fund, it could be a game changer, couldn't it?
It really could. That safety net, however small initially, could mean getting medical care when needed or having something to tide them over during a bad month. It provides a level of security they just don't have now.
These aren't just sob stories. It's the reality for so many people powering this gig economy in Telangana and beyond. This bill is about them.
Exactly. It's about recognizing their reality and trying to offer a tangible improvement, a basic level of dignity and security in their work.
So wrapping this up, this Telangana bill, it feels like more than just rules on paper. It feels like a statement.
I think so too. It's acknowledging these workers, acknowledging their struggles and saying, we need to do something concrete.
With the welfare fund, the pretty serious penalties, the attempt at being consultative, it's a bold move.
It definitely is. It's trying to rebalance the scales a bit in an economic model that often feels heavily weighted against the individual worker.
Now, is it perfect? Probably not. Will there be challenges? Absolutely. We've talked about those.
Implementation will be complex, no doubt. But it's a significant step, potentially a landmark one for gig worker rights in India.
It raises those fundamental questions about platform responsibility, worker rights in this new economy. And with that May Day 2025 target date approaching, There's a lot of anticipation.
People will be watching closely to see the final version and how it rolls out.
So maybe the next time you use one of these apps, just pause for a second. Think about the person bringing your food or giving you a ride.
They're not just part of the app, they're individuals navigating this often precarious world of work, usually without the safety nets many others have.
And the final thought to leave folks with. Could this Telangana bill be the start of something bigger? Could it spark a real nationwide shift in how India supports its massive and growing gig workforce?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Could this be the catalyst that fundamentally changes the landscape for gig workers across the country? Definitely something to keep an eye on.